So first of all, thank you for agreeing to help us explain to people what this prize is and what the genesis of the prize was. And I thought that maybe the best way to begin would be to ask you about your father. Why is it that you decided on a prize like this in his honor and his memory?
We got to it in a rather circuitous way. My sisters and I very much wanted to create a tribute to him on the occasion of his 80th birthday back in 2006 that would be reflective of core values of his, that would give him a lot of joy, but also that would express who he is, and that would also create a tangible reality that could not be undone, that would be reflective of who he was. And among the themes that really defined him was, first of all, a love for Jewish literature without borders. My father grew up in Berlin and was a voracious reader of Jewish fiction, nonfiction, Torah text, made time to learn Torah every day, read modern Jewish literature, Yiddish literature. I often like to say that in the offices of Amazon Deutschland, there must be a big plaque in his honor. And from the time that we grew up in Bogota, Colombia, which is where my sisters and I were born, my parents came there after the war, there were books everywhere. Everywhere where there should be books, everywhere where there shouldn't be books, there was just books, and there were his books. And he was passionate about it and always talked about it. And instilled in us a love of reading, and specifically of reading on Jewish topics. So that was one defining theme. Another defining theme that expressed itself in his business life and in his communal life was that he always had enthusiasm for finding ways to give oxygen to young talent. My father was in the real estate business in Colombia, and he relished the opportunity to always give more rope to the young architects and the young engineers than they would otherwise get elsewhere, to let them prove themselves, to give them a push. In communal life, it was the same thing. Bogota was a very small Jewish community. He was among the leaders of the community, and he always insisted that the younger people get a seat at the table of communal life, and always listening to them and making sure that they would get lots of responsibility early for the same reasons. So we fused these two ideas and with the help of the Jewish Book Council, refined the idea of creating a prize in his honor when he turned 80 that united these two themes to create a way for emerging Jewish writers in both fiction and nonfiction who were expressing a new vision and promise of future achievement, to give them a push.
So it is a beautiful idea. It's been very successful, as you know, and it's launched a lot of careers, which I'm sure both gave him satisfaction, and I'm sure it gives you satisfaction in his memory. You tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, what was your career? Did you start your career in Colombia? Did you start your business career here?
I started my business career here. After high school, I came to the United States. I came to college here, went to grad school here, married an American girl who wasn't going back to Colombia. And I decided I want to be in America, and started my career here. I'm in the investment management business and have been doing that for about the last 23 years.
And do you see that passion for Jewish learning and literature and so on going through the generations of Rohrs? Has your father's love of Jewish literature touched his children and maybe his grandchildren?
Well, he certainly succeeded with his children. My sisters and I are very passionate about Jewish learning, Jewish literature, and whether we are as successful with our children
it's harder these days.
Right, absolutely, as our father was with us, still remains to be seen. I think we're on a promising path, and we're on a generally promising path in many of the cases.
Right. And one never
So,
knows. They're
one
full
never knows.
children are full of surprises as they
Exactly.
grow. And as you look back over the now 10 years of the prize, is there a prize that sticks out in your mind, one or two people who you were there at the inception of their career that you're very proud that you gave them their push? I mean, I know you're proud of all of them, but I just wonder if there's somebody who comes to mind.
Yeah, I mean, you're trying to, you're making me choose among my 11 children. You know, it's been 10 years, but there were 11 winners and runners-up, many more, and finalists and so forth, and I sort of feel like they're all our children. I have to say, needless to say, I'm proud of all of them. I have to say, though, that I'm especially proud of the judges and the process that has yielded the winners. I read all the finalists' books and before the decision is made, and it happens very often where, were it only on the basis of the book and were the choice up to me, that I would have chosen somebody else as the winner. But that's exactly why we have a panel of judges with so many voices from around the Jewish world to be thoughtful about who should win, because it's not only about the book, as you know, it's about the author and his or her promise for the future and their ability to be a spokesperson for Jewish literature to this generation. That said, I'm proud of all of them. There are some recent developments that come to mind which validate, I think, what all of us are doing here with the Jewish Book Council and the prize. You take a look, for example, at what happened with Mati Friedman recently. He won 2 years ago for the Aleppo Codex, and since then has written another book, Pumpkin Flowers. But in the interim, and you know, he has said openly that were it not for the breathing space that the prize gave him, he wouldn't have been able to turn to his next work. But in the interim, in between the two books, he left his job at the Associated Press, wrote a very frank and tough piece in Tablet that then led to a piece in The Atlantic about treatment by the general media, including the Associated Press, his former employer, of Israel, and the pressure that young reporters and old reporters felt by their management, from their management, to spin things in a certain way, which he felt was unjustifiable. And he said that had it not been for the fact that he had the freedom now not to worry about that week's paycheck from the Associated Press, he might not have written that piece. And that he heard from many of his peers, you are so lucky to be able to speak out that way. We can't, because we can't.
Paycheck to paycheck.
Paycheck to paycheck.
And because that was the first year I was one of the judges, it affirms exactly what you said, which is the book itself certainly deserved to win, but when we met him and we saw his possibilities to be a spokesperson in the Jewish world, it was a very powerful endorsement of the book, even apart from the merit of the book. And I wonder how you came to that decision, because that's very rare. I don't know of another book prize that bases itself in part on the personality and promise of the author, rather than the personality and promise of the author as reflected in the book, where you actually sit down and interview them. So how was that decision made?
I think it was really driven, and my sisters and I discussed that very point at length, because it was a message that we wanted to convey to the Jewish Book Council very clearly. We wanted it really to reflect who my father was, right? In other words, it wasn't just about the young architect who was competent now at age 27 rather than waiting till he was 37 or 47 and therefore give him a shot now at 27. It was make a statement that competent guys at the age of 27 can do great things, right? And so it's maybe not such an artful parallel, but the point of making a larger statement than the book itself on behalf of the craft
Right.
is what we really were hoping for. And it's obviously it's not only Matti.
No, but he's
right.
just a good example of almost all the authors that you, and one of the things that you generally don't expect from people who are voracious readers is that they'll be attuned as much as your father obviously was to human character and potential. A lot of people who are, as you know, a lot of people who are in love with books are more awkward around people. And the fact that he could be that voracious and still be a successful businessman and promote young talent, that's an unusual skill.
Yeah.
So, so I understand why the prize would be unusual as a reflection of that.
Right.
The other thing that I wanted to ask you was whether you think that this kind of model, because it's really, as I said, not only unique among book prizes, but I think in the Jewish world, that this kind of model that honors both the product and the person might be exportable to other areas of the Jewish world, and whether it might encourage young scholars in other fields, as well as nonfiction, fiction books, like whether you might encourage young teachers or young, I don't know, young Jewish entrepreneurs or so on, and whether you've seen like the process of giving prizes to promising young people has in fact fantastic results that other philanthropists might consider emulating.
I would hope so. I would hope so. I haven't seen it directly targeted.
Yes.
I think it happens, kind of organically from time to time, but I haven't seen it as an agenda item on philanthropists' radar screen. It was a decision that we had to make in terms of arriving at the prize covering both fiction and nonfiction.
Right. That was the other question I was going to ask you.
Sure.
Why you chose both?
Right, for that very reason. Certainly, there was clarity around the nonfiction prize because often there's a more predictable trajectory that you can conjure up in your mind in that setting where there's an emerging scholar in a particular field that just there's much more to say in that field. When it comes to fiction, it's not that clear, right? At the same time, we wanted to make the statement that fiction on subjects of Jewish interest is very, very important to us as a culture, as a nation, and it should be motivated. And so that's why we decided to do both.
And my last question is, books are still very important, but there's lots of other media that seems to be encroaching on book world for lots of reasons, visual media and so on. But I know that you still treasure the book. What do you think is special about books?
Books give the author the amplitude of expressing and developing. Certainly in fiction, and of course when there's research to be laid out and so forth in the setting of a nonfiction book, it's still the medium. Now, whether it's actually a physical object or whether it's on a tablet or ultimately people are going to read it on their phones or books on tape or whatnot, yes, it's true that in our society attention spans are getting more and more compressed by the minute, and so people are reading less and less books than they were 2 generations ago or even 1 generation ago. Nevertheless, the ideas that are really important will continue to be read and given expression to in book form, and books will then provide the platform from which Netflix series are developed and whatnot. I mean, clearly we're now in the golden age of television, where in many ways television provides the medium and the venue that the novel did in the late 19th century. Where there's no time limit anymore. There can be X number of episodes for a Y number of chapters, and so you expand it for this many seasons. And so the stories can be told and will be told, and as the cost and the execution of the visual media continues to drop, increasingly you'll see great literature translated into visual media in great ways. And ultimately it's about the story. We're certainly not religious about the print medium.
Right.
It's right now what affords us the amplitude,
Right.
but over time it'll be a platform for other things as well.
Well, on behalf of all of us readers, thank you for encouraging the people who expand our imaginations.
Thank you, Rabbi Wolpe.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support JBS, the Jewish Broadcasting Service, with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more, to the nonprofit organization Jewish Education in Media. Simply visit the JBS homepage and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check made out to Jem, Post Office Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.